In tonight's headlines, the Observatory issues the first number 8 tropical cyclone warning signal of the year as Super Typhoon Yagi edges closer to Hong Kong. China pledges 360 billion yuan in financing for Africa over the next 3 years and promises to help create 1 million jobs on the continent. And a 14-year-old suspect guns down 2 fellow students and 2 teachers at a high school in the U.S. state of Georgia.
The storm signal number 8 is in force as Super Typhoon Yagi continues to intensify and edge closer to the city. The warning signal, issued at 6:20 p.m. and the first to hit the city this year, will remain in place at least until noon tomorrow. The observatory forecasted that Yagi would remain at super typhoon intensity and skirt about 300 kilometers to the southwest of Hong Kong tomorrow morning. Gale winds associated with Yagi are expected to affect the vicinity of the Pearl River estuary tonight to tomorrow morning. The weather forecaster said the intense rain bands associated with Yagi will continue to affect the territory and predicted that heavy squally showers will be hitting the city tomorrow. Seas will be very rough with swells, and citizens are urged to stay away from the shoreline and avoid engaging in water sports.
Students in the city are bracing for a long weekend with typhoon holidays just days after their new school year started. While for wage earners, typhoon holiday may become history amid a shift in the working approach to a hybrid one. The Education Bureau announced that classes of all-day schools, including secondary schools, primary schools, special schools, and kindergartens, would remain suspended tomorrow. While primary and kindergarten school kids had already enjoyed their extra holiday in advance today, some secondary school students were released early this afternoon, and long queues were spotted at the bus stops in some school zones. This student was over the moon because of the school suspension. I'm happy but also sad since it is my duty to go to school. Actually, I'm just kidding. I don't like going to school, this student said. Evening school would be suspended tonight, and the Education Bureau will announce in due course whether evening classes will be cancelled for an additional night tomorrow. Meanwhile, lives of adults during typhoon time would not be as enjoyable as before. This man said although he got early release, it did not really make a difference since there were so many people leaving at the same time, and it seemed even more crowded than before. These bankers said they still need to work even though they will stay at home, so tomorrow is not exactly a holiday. Jeremy Zhu, Cable News.
The city's transportation service providers have implemented various service adjustments in response to Typhoon Yagi. The MTR will remain limited rail and bus services even when the number 8 signal is in force, but services will be affected if the signal is upgraded to number 9 or above. Bus operators Kowloon Model Bus and Long Wing Bus said 33 routes, including a few routes to and from the border control points and the airport, will provide limited service. Citybus will operate normal services until shortly before 10 p.m., and some routes will provide limited services thereafter depending on weather conditions. All ferry services from Tsim Sha Tsui, Central and Wan Chai, including those to outlying islands, were suspended at 8 p.m. The cross-border Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge will close 9 p.m. until further notice. Cotai Waterjet and Turbojet have suspended all sailings to and from Macau after 4 p.m. Super Typhoon Yagi has also prompted flight cancellation and delay, with a total of 38 flights cancelled today. Hong Kong Express, the low-cost airline under Cathay Pacific, cancelled 6 flights today and also exit 16 flights tomorrow, bringing the total number of cancellations to 22, including those to and from Osaka, Seoul, Phuket, Chiang Mai, Sanya, Clark, Kaohsiung, Da Nang, Taipei, and Tokyo. Passengers can change their tickets for free or get a refund, completing the procedures by September 20th. Hong Kong Airlines has cancelled 4 flights between Hong Kong and Hainan tomorrow, including Haikou and Sanya. The passengers can change their tickets for free. Meanwhile, Greater Bay Airlines announced that 4 flights to and from Tokyo and Osaka will be cancelled tomorrow, while 2 flights between Hong Kong and Manila will be delayed until Saturday. As for Cathay Pacific Airways, flight service had remained normal so far.
聽日嘅朝早咧，我哋會啟動航班重新編配機制。
Chapman Fong, Airport Authority's Deputy Director of Airport Operations, said they will activate the flight reallocation system to coordinate the resumption of flights tomorrow morning. Also, the airport operator will bring an e-taxi queuing system for travelers to call taxis in a safe indoor environment and set up temporary lounges for affected travelers, Fong added. Evelyn Bai, Cable News. A number of flooding black spots were getting themselves ready in full battle array, as residents in Sam Ka Shun, in Lei Yu Mun, and Hang Fa Chun had put wind and flood prevention in place to protect their properties in the face of Yagi. In Sam Ka Chun, the Drainage Services Department has put up part of water deflectors and sandbags last night in some narrow alleys by the sea. Many seafood restaurants in the area decided not to do business at all today.
最大問題係潮水漲，其實。
This woman said the biggest problem is the high tide, which will rush into the house, so she anticipated suffering losses in the end. As for Hang Fa Chun, a traditional wind-prone site, has already seen waves crashing at the beach while residents still continued their morning exercise. The path close to the sea has been blocked to prevent residents from approaching. Workers have been busy removing kiosks and installing water barriers to prevent flooding in the buildings. Tape has also been applied to the glass entrances and exits of buildings. In Wantoi Estate in Taiwan, an area that experienced severe flooding last year, cleaners are sweeping up fallen leaves to prevent drain blockages. Meanwhile, private cars and motorcycles remain parked in the car park, as the management company has prepared sandbags in advance. Evelyn Bai, Cable News.
President Xi Jinping said Sino-African relations are at their best in history and proposed to raise bilateral relations with all African nations that have ties with China to a strategic level amid an intensified rivalry with the U.S.-led West.
中华人民共和国即将迎来75周年华诞。
Xi, in his keynote speech at the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation Summit, said both sides should jointly set off a wave of modernization in the global south and open a new chapter in our drive for a community with a shared future for mankind. While outlining China's 3-year agenda for the world's fastest-growing continent, Xi pledged to offer 360 billion yuan in fresh financing to African states, support for 30 infrastructure projects across the resource-rich continent, and promised to create at least 1 million jobs. He also promised delegates from more than 50 African nations that the world's second-largest economy will unilaterally improve access to its market for African trade.
This was one of the terrifying moments at the Appalachia High School in the U.S. state of Georgia, where a class teacher told pupils to hide under their desks and raise their hands after a 14-year-old student opened fire on campus, killing 4 people and wounding 9 others. Police, emergency services, and other law enforcement agencies in the city of Winder, roughly 80 kilometers northeast of state capital Atlanta, rushed to the scene after receiving reports of an active shooter on site just after 10 a.m. local time. Schools across the county went into lockdown mode while anxious parents scrambled for information. The gunfire forced students and staff out of the school building, and many of them gathered in the football stadium. A school resource deputy confronted the shooter, who surrendered and was taken into custody. He was identified as Colt Gray, who was interviewed last year by police about anonymous online threats. Gray used an AR-15 style rifle, but authorities did not reveal how he got the weapon. The 4 deceased victims included 2 14-year-old students, a 39-year-old male teacher, and a 53-year-old female teacher. Barrow County Sheriff Judge Smith described the attack as pure evil and added that no motive had been identified. This was the 23rd school shooting in the U.S. this year, according to a database maintained by magazine Education Week. So far, 11 people have been killed and 38 were wounded in such attacks. Sachin Katwi, Cable News.